First, can you give me an example of something you accomplished in The Nun 2 that you have to credit to doing La Llorona and The Conjuring 3 first, where if the filmmaking order had changed, you wouldn't have been able to accomplish that thing on this movie?
I think the whole movie, honestly. I think the newsstand sequence was probably the biggest one. That was with the scares, you're always trying to come up with something that's unique and memorable. And it was one of the earliest ideas that I had as we first started developing the movie. And literally, it was the longest, most hardest journey to get that thing pulled off. And it basically was like I was working on that until the end. It was like the first thing I was working on and the last thing I was working on. That was 100% a beast, and really, and it almost broke me. I didn't know as one scene could break someone, but it was a beast.
Oh, so many follow-up questions, specifically for the magazine stand sequence. What was it that took so long? Is there a particular element of crafting something like that requires that amount of time?
It was everything, even in how it would be conceived. I knew that I got it. Like I was looking at all this like street photography from the France in the 50s. And there was, I think it was like Rene Maltet, probably got his name wrong, but he's a French photographer, and he'd do this kind of like visual, like kind of trickery with like his photos, but it was all in camera. And I just thought it would be cool if like the nun was like manifesting in the environment. And then I would see these old newsstands. And so I had this idea. I was like, I want the nun to appear within a newsstand. And I was thinking maybe it's like a flip book. Maybe it's like each magazine is like a flip book, and then it's a collage, and they're all kind of like, coming together. And then it was like how we were going to do that. I thought, well, we should just do it all on camera. We should like print all these magazines and then mechanically rig them all to turn. And we blow some with wind, and then some of them are a little bit more controlled. And that got us like 50% of the way there. But then it's like some of the mechanical rigging would break, and we're shooting at night, and it was like the whole thing was falling apart. And I was like, this will never work. And so then there was some like visual effects like supplementing it in the end. But it was really a beast. I mean, just from like the how it would manifest, and because it was trickier than it looks.
I'm surprised even that much of that sequence was done practically in camera. Job very, very well done with that part. What about in a broader sense, in terms of visual scare tactics? Can you maybe give me an example of, a trick you thought was really scary when you first started making movies, but along the way with all of your experience realized like, actually, if I do it this way, it's far more terrifying?
I think great scares are really patient. I think having like the confidence, and also I think great movies have a great relationship with the audience. I mean, but especially a great horror movie, and giving them room to breathe. It's almost like a stand-up comedian, like a really good comedian, someone who's like, really good on stage, like interacts with the audience. And it's hard to do that. It's hard to do that when you're making your first movie, because you're like, you don't know like what the audience is thinking. You're just there scrambling to make your day. You don't know, you got kids that you're going to lose in like a couple of minutes. It's like, and what I've come to realize is like that relationship with the audience, giving them room to be engaged. Like an audience comes in with so much energy. They're excited to see the movie. They have their own fears. They're bringing their own fears into these spaces. And it's kind of like giving them that space and giving them the room to lean in. I think that's something that I've come to appreciate more in other filmmakers. I'm always striving for more, and it's just, building with that relationship.
As a member of that audience, I appreciate that answer quite a bit. All right. I got to talk about Akela Cooper, because I don't know how much the two of you work directly together on the film, but clearly she's becoming one of the most exciting voices in horror right now. So can you maybe specify something that she brought to this story, or maybe the Conjuring verse overall, that is unique to her and wound up being especially creatively fulfilling for you to execute in the film?
There's two things. One would be in spoiler territory, and then the other ones wouldn't be. Would we like? I could come back to the
put a pin in that. Yeah. We'll come back to it.
We'll come back to the Akela. That one thing. What she did bring is the core story was always there. The idea that first of all, I always loved the characters of Irene and Jonas. Not Jonas, Maurice, played by Jonas, from the first film. I love their relationship, a little bit of their flirtation. I love how he was a little bit of a dog, and she was nun in training, and there was that kind of chemistry there and that friendship. And in the first film, he saves her life, and there's that life debt there. And the core emotional through line of her script, which really stayed through the end, is the idea of this life debt, the idea that she owed him, and now that he was the one who needed saving, and she goes on this mission, and she's facing her fears. She's going back into hell on this journey to save her friend. And the idea of that, I was that was so emotionally powerful. I was like, I love that. I love these characters. I also love the actors so much. They're so great. And I just thought that this is so really compelling. That's the first thing she brought. The other thing is the sister Deborah. I love how it had, there's a lot of these kind of great just reversals in the film, where in the first film, Irene is the junior recruit. She's, being brought in for special powers by, the older priest. And then in this one, she's the senior member. She's the top dog, and she's not recruiting, but you have a young novitiate who's tagging along with her. And I thought the role reversal there was so fun. And I really gravitated that. Those core elements right off the bat. I think she has a great sense of story, and she also loves horror movies. I think we just geeked out about that all the time. We're big Ridley Scott fans. We're big Alien fans, and she. there's lots of even nods in that some of them I don't know if it made into the final cut, but there's she has Ridley Scott Easter eggs in the movie.
Oh, I am so curious now to give it a rewatch and try to find some of them before we switch to spoiler territory. I'll squeeze in two more questions here. Because you brought up Jonas, I'll go specifically to him. Can you kind of walk us through maybe some of the conversations you had or some of the notes you gave him when it came to figuring out how much of him was OG Frenchie and how much of him was Valak?
That was always... it was always a discussion. I think one of the big things is we wanted him to be, the relationship that he's having with everyone at the school needs to be Frenchie. We need to establish someone that we love and is worth saving. That's one of the tricks of the movie, and a little bit of a magic trick in or rule bending is, he needs to have a relationship with Sophie, with our young girl. He needs to have a relationship with Kate, the teacher, and you need to believe in these relationships and care about them, even though we come to realize that Valak is within him, using him as a vessel. So that needed to be the true OG Frenchie, and it couldn't be some Valak manipulation, because I think if you thought that Valak was just becoming friends with Sophie to manipulate a situation, then everything was kind of thrown out the window. So it needed to be valid, and you needed to feel like that was a relationship that was worth fighting for.
Yet another win in that respect. I love that character so much. I will ask, this is not spoiler territory because it is mentioned in the first act of the movie, but bringing up, Frenchie going from film 1 to 2, there is one character that didn't make it from film 1 to 2. And it was making me wonder, was there ever a version of this movie where you all brought back Father Burke?
As a zombie, yes. But
I would watch that. You're joking, but I'm serious. I want to see that now.
I mean, that was an idea. That was, what I thought.
Wait, it was a legitimate idea?
I pitch a lot of crazy ideas. I mean, it was one of those things because you're it was one of many ideas. So it's it's not, I don't know how far it was. I think I probably killed it while I was still in the crib, but at the end of the movie, you want it to be a fun house of scares, and you want Valak to be throwing everything it has at our characters. Mm-hmm. So that was in consideration, but I don't know if we could have brought back Father Burke just to be a zombie. But it was something we were, there was so many great characters out of the first film. It was something I think we really wanted to introduce Storm. I think that we wanted to introduce another nun. And so it became a balance of how big does this team get? How many storylines can we carry? And, Father Burke, unfortunately, you'll see the film.